right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Up and In Show. We are at Cards and Culture on the Purple Couch, and I am with my guy, Bob Didier. So if you guys know me a little bit, if you tuned into the show, if you guys know anything about F45, Bo Didier is one of my best friends. We played college baseball together at LSU, and now we're business partners with F45 training. And over the years, Bo and I, 10, 15-year relationship, have gotten to know this man. It's Bo's dad, and everything that Bo knows about baseball and sports and life, and was taught from this man, and started his baseball career at a young age, and made it to the major leagues at 19, 20 years old. And we're gonna shoot the shit today and talk about some stories. And you're still involved in the game, so I want to talk about the things that you're doing, in the youth part of the game, the things that you're still passing on your knowledge with, and of course we got to talk about the ring.
Well, Anthony, it's nice to be here back in Baton Rouge. I grew up in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
I went to a high school here in Baton Rouge, Glen Oaks High School, back in the day, and I was a fourth-round draft by the Atlanta Braves. And
At a high school here in Baton Rouge?
Out of high school, I played here. The Baton Rouge is a real baseball area. Everybody thinks football and LSU, but the baseball, LSU baseball, but the caliber of youth baseball in Baton Rouge is really, really good.
No, absolutely. And your dad, was he from here as well?
Yes, my dad is in the LSU Hall of Fame
That's right.
as a football player and a right-handed pitcher.
That's awesome.
And he was a high school coach. He's scouted, a real famous scout. I just got a call the other day telling a story. He signed Andre Dawson, a Hall of Famer, along with he signed Gary Carter, which is, I'd really like telling the Gary Carter story, because Gary Carter went in the Hall of Fame as a catcher. And my dad was with the Montreal Expos, director of major scouting, and he drafted Gary Carter in like the third round, and he was a shortstop in high school.
Okay.
And my dad made him a catcher, and after his 15-year career, he was inducted in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Yep. And what's so funny is he was Gary the Kid Carter, right? That was like his nickname?
That was his nickname.
That was actually my high school field, because I grew up in New Jersey, so our field was named after Gary Carter, so that's pretty cool.
That is great. Well, I tell you, it was really a funny story. My dad, they drafted him, and they had their first instructional league down in Florida, and my dad called him into his office, and Gary walked into the office, and he said, Mr. Didier, what do you want? And my dad had a catcher's mitt, and he flipped it to him, and Gary caught the catcher's mitt. He said, well, Mr. D, I play shortstop and third base. I don't know if I'm a catcher. And 15 years of catching, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And my dad just saw the leadership and just his ability as an athlete and just his mental makeup, and knew he would be a great catcher.
Yeah, no, I mean, the stories about your dad, throughout professional baseball and stuff, it was really cool for me to understand, right? Because I had a relationship with Bo, and I was here at LSU, and I'd heard the stories and stuff, but then when you get to pro ball, it's really cool to understand that and see that and hear that, right? And I had two really good friends that played in the Blue Jays organization where he was finishing up his career, right? He was 88 years old, still scouting with the Blue Jays. I got my dog Lila over here on the couch just wiping herself. Unbelievable. And that's the thing that I thought was so cool, was your guys' name in professional baseball ran so deep when I got there. So I love the tradition, the history of it. And you even were managing, right? When I was wrapping up my career, you were still managing?
Yeah, I coached and managed. I was with Toronto as a AAA manager. I managed some pretty good players. Shawn Green, 40 home runs, 1 year with the Dodgers. Carlos Delgado hit over 300 home runs. And I had them in AAA. We didn't lose too many games.
Yeah.
And I tell you the story the other day about Craig Biggio shaking his hand and telling him, congratulations, you're going to the major leagues. But I had Shawn Green in Syracuse, New York. And it was funny. We were playing, the team won a couple games in front of us, And if we won that game, we would like move into first place. And I'd got a call that day from Toronto front office that said, well, to tell Shawn Green after this game that he's going to the major leagues. So you're saying don't play him. Don't play him. He might get hurt. Something could happen. So sit him out. So I made my lineup out, and I put it up in the dressing room. And 5 minutes after I posted the lineup, Shawn walked up to me and says, Skip, I'd like to talk to you. So we went in my office. His name wasn't in the lineup. I thought he wanted to beat me up. And, well, he knew we had to win. He was hitting 365, batting third, playing center field.
Biggest game of the year.
And biggest game of the year. He knew if we had a chance to win, he needed to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
So I walked in my office. He came in behind me. He didn't close the door. He slammed it. And he said, we got to talk. He goes, how come I'm not playing? I said, I'm just going to give you a day off today, just kind of rest you. You've been playing every day. And he said, he looked me right in the eye, and he said, you know, I should be playing. I said, and I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell him.
Your hands were tied, yeah.
So the whole game, I'm walking in the dugout, and I could feel his eyes. His eyes were on me. I think he wanted to beat me up in the dugout for not putting his name on the lineup card. But it was funny, about the seventh inning, we had our hitting coach in town by the name of Bill Buckner, famous, really great hitter. And in the seventh inning, I called Bill Buckner over, and I said, do me a favor. I said, I'm going to take Shawn Green off the bench, walk him back down into the clubhouse in my office, close the door, and give him the phone and tell him to call his dad back in California and see if he can get him on a plane, because he was playing tomorrow night in Toronto. And Bill said when he told Shawn that he was going to the big leagues, and that was the reason why he wasn't playing, we kind of went back to being friends. But, you know, it's
funny how that softens him up a little bit, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, going to the major leagues, as you know, the minute you find out you're going to the major leagues, you call your family, I mean, everybody you know, and let them know, hey, I'm going to be in the big leagues.
Yeah. And the thing that you were telling me yesterday, right, that a lot of people don't understand is that you can't tell the player, like it's because the major league player has to come down, and they didn't want that to leak out before, right? And the team has to talk to him. So that's the hardest part. And you can't explain that to the kid right then and there.
No, I mean, you know, I mean, like they said, don't tell Shawn until after the game, because they had to move a player. Well, yesterday I told you the story about Craig Beachia. I managed AAA for Houston and in Tucson, and his mother was there in town. And I went up to her right before the game, and I asked Mrs. Beachia, I said, can you keep a secret? And she looked at me and kind of dumbfounded. Well, what do you mean? I says, well, your son is going to be playing in the major leagues tomorrow night. You might want to see about getting a plane ticket. And but there's going to be a player move, and they didn't want Craig to call someone in Houston and say, hey, look, I'm going to be there, I need a place to stay, or even it leaked out that he was being moved to the major leagues, because things these dominoes start falling. And so I did get to shake his hand, and, you know, he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, and it was one of my highlights as a minor league manager, because baseball can be a very cold game. You have to release players. You tell them they're traded, they're sent down, they're no longer follow their dreams. So to be able to look a kid in the eye, Beachia at the time was 21 years old, and be able to tell him, you know, congratulations, you're going to be in the major leagues tomorrow. And that is a big highlight for a minor league manager.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine. And too, I was fortunate enough to get that call, and it's something that I'll never forget. I'll never forget that moment, that team, that manager. So it's pretty cool just that, you know, you've had major leaguers, Hall of Famers, guys that have made impacts in the game that'll never forget you because of those moments too. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I run across baseball. You know, it's a small world, and you see people. And I called Craig a couple years ago. I had some friends in Houston. They want to go to Major League game, and he works in the front office. And I said, Craig, got him on the phone, and I said, how's your mom? And he laughed, and she still tells a story about she knew I was going to the major leagues before I did. Yeah. And I said, look, can you get me some tickets for tonight's game? I've got some friends in from Louisiana, and sure enough, he got me tickets. But it's awesome. It's a small world, so it's a great world. I mean, the people I met, I mean, I almost feel like Forrest Gump. I've been home for 4 days. I tell stories, I talk baseball, and just...
It's great though. And especially for me and our listeners and the people that, you know, that my demographic that come in here, right? This is the stuff that we don't know. We've never heard these things. And people might know your name. They might see, you know, Tigers, Red Sox, major league player, you know, all these things, manager, but they don't know these intricate little stories, the details, the, you know, the fun parts, the funny parts, the amazing parts. So that's what I like. And I'm like, dude, you are an almanac of all these like great things. So, and of course, I mean, you got to, and this is the thing too. Again, I played with Bo. He's my best friend. I didn't know this, that you even were coaching on the Yankees, the teams that I used to watch growing up, and you were a third base coach for those teams, right?
Yeah. And the Yankees, I got to work as a catching coach, and Jorge Posada and I became very good friends. He's from Puerto Rico and converted like infielder to catching. Yeah. And, the manager, Joe Torres, says, will you just work with him in spring training, and during the season, my only job was to watch him catch and then critique him and coach him, and just like handling pitches. I never will forget, he was kind of starstruck with like Messina. We had Roger Clemens, and Roger Clemens, I never will forget, he got in a little thing where he really liked to throw his off-speed pitch. He had about a 98-mile-an-hour split-fingered fastball that bottom would drop. And Roger wouldn't use his fastball enough, and we were trying to get him to use his fastball more and not just depend on all these off-speed pitches, which was tough on his arm.
Yeah.
And
why would he just leaned on the off speed more? I mean, I remember watching him. I mean,
Roger Clemens, like a lot of great pitchers, he didn't want the ball to be hit.
Yeah, so he just wanted
swings and misses. So he had a pitch, a split-fingered fastball, 94 to 98. You couldn't hardly foul it off.
I remember.
And so I told Jorge, I said, let me tell you how to handle Roger Clemens to throw more fastballs.
Yeah.
And he says, well, what do you do? I said, just go out to the mound, get up close to him, look him right in the eyes, and say, Roger, your fastball is alive. It's electric. Nobody can touch your fastball. What do you want to start this next hitter off with? And Roger would come back, fastball. And I said, sometimes you got to talk to these pitchers into,
right?
You know,
yeah,
you know. And then he could spot his fastball. But it was easier on his arm, and we wanted him to pitch 300 innings in 1 year and just, you know, start after start. Yep. And this split finger was putting a lot of pressure on his elbow, and he was having arm issues. So I convinced Jorge that Rogers, he's kind of like a middle linebacker in football. You just got to get him psyched up and turn him loose.
He's like a bull.
And I mean, he went after hitters, and it's a shame he's not in the Hall of Fame or going to be, because you look at his numbers and 6 or 7, you know, Cy Young awards in 20-game seasons.
It was ridiculous. It was like video game numbers, like every night. It was so fun watching him pitch growing up. It was, you knew what you were getting every time.
Oh, I mean, you know, 20 strikeouts, 17, 15. Yep. I mean,
did he really? So there was a rumor that he used to put icy hot or whatever it was on his balls, like before the game, or in his sliders. Is that true? You know anything about that?
Well, I didn't ask about that area, but
well, I was just saying those are the rumors.
I know
like,
one
this dude
thing
was crazy.
that he would get fire in his eyes and he'd have smoke coming out of his ears.
Yeah,
I've never seen a more intense competitor. I mean, I think he wanted somebody to fumble so he could recover it.
Yeah.
I mean, he had that football mentality, toughness, and you know, a good person, good guy. I've been to his house in Houston, and he, you know, sons played baseball, and I mean, he was just always signed an autograph. If I asked him to sign something or a picture or a ball, I mean, just
that's awesome.
You know, he was a real class guy.
I love hearing that. What else? Who are some other Yankees that you enjoyed your time with? Who are some class guys? Because like I said, 96 to 2001 were my dream years growing up, and obviously it was the prime time of the Yankees.
Well, probably Derek Jeter was the captain of the team. I'll tell you a Derek Jeter story. My daughter was 16 years old back in Seattle, and I wanted to do something special for her birthday. And, I mean, she had a Derek Jeter poster in her room.
Yeah.
You know, she had a crush like I think every young girl under 21, 25 on Derek Jeter. Single, nice-looking guy, but just a real plight. And I went up to him at his locker. My family was coming in New York for a weekend series, and I said, Derek, my 16-year-old daughter is coming in to New York. I want to give her a birthday present. Would you sign this picture? And I had an 8x10 black and white picture of Derek Jeter. And I said, Derek, will you sign this to my daughter?
Yeah.
Casey, Kayce.
Yeah.
He took the picture, flipped it to the side, and he rolled out. He had like a poster, huge poster of himself. And he said, well, what's her name? And then I told him and spelled it out for him. He wrote her a nice note, happy birthday. But I thought that was really a classy thing to do. He didn't have to do. He could have just taken this little small picture. You know, best wishes, Derek Jeter, happy birthday. And he got this beautiful colored
poster
and signed it to my daughter. And and he said, I want to meet her when she's here. And so sure enough, outside of the dressing room, he went out and shook hands with her and gave her a hug and wished her happy birthday. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love hearing those stories. What about, all right, you know, it doesn't have to be to the Yankees, but I just always wondered that old school guys were grinders. Who was the biggest grinder that you either played with? And, you know, there's crazy stories like guys pissing on their hands, right, for calluses and like just, you know, crazy stories. You got somebody off the top of your head?
I mean, I played with the Braves in the late 60s and 70s. And, you know, old school baseball players just, I mean, you know, they'd wear the same socks if they got hits in them. Very superstitious. Clete Boyer, who played for the Yankees and was third baseman in Atlanta, this guy, he would do the same thing. If he got 3 hits or 4 hits, he would do the same, eat the same food, do whatever. But you're right, old school baseball players. I mean,
different game. They were just like grinders.
Well,
they played hard,
number one, they
injuries.
didn't make a lot of money.
Yeah,
so
true.
The love of the game was a lot more evident because, you know, guys just didn't make the money. I mean, it took Hank Aaron like 27 years to get to $100,000 a year.
What?
You know, salary. He and Willie Mays at the same time they paid him $100,000. Now the minimum salary in the major leagues is $700,000 a year.
Wow. First
Year player. But the old school baseball players, they played hard. They, you know, after the game was over, everybody wasn't running off. They would sit around in front of their locker and maybe drink a Budweiser and just talk baseball and
Play some cards, shoot the shit.
Yeah, I learned a lot of baseball listening to Clete Boyer tell stories, Hank Aaron, these guys, these old school players that just,
you got to play with Hank with the Braves?
I did. My first year in the major leagues was 1969. I was 20-year-old starting catcher for the Atlanta Braves, and Hank Aaron was a right fielder. And this guy, I'm going to tell you, watching him play was like unbelievable. But he made the game look way too easy. And a lot of people, like Willie Mays would take off for a ball in center field. His hat would fly off. He'd catch the ball below his belt, kind of fancy.
Right.
And everything he did had flair about him. And Hank was just glide to this. In fact, I remember Hank one year, he stole 30-something bases. And then Canseco came along years after and started the 40-40 club, 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases.
Yeah.
And Hank made a comment that got in the newspaper, and he said, if I knew they were going to make that big a deal over 40 stolen bases and 40 home runs. He said, I'd have done that 3 or 4 times. He was just that gifted. He could hit anybody's fastball. I never will forget, when I was a rookie, we would go around the National League. And the National League back then was known for power pitchers. Steve Carlton, like Tom. You go to New York, Tom Seaver, Kuzman, Gentry, all these guys, they're all through 95 to 100. They had Nolan Ryan trying to get into rotation, throwing 103. And Hank would come into town, and every starting pitcher would try to take their fastball and throw it by Hank Aaron, the greatest fastball hitter in the world. So these guys are not too smart,
Dumb.
And I never will forget when spring training, we were going to open up on the West Coast, and we went out to Arizona on the way, and we were going to open up 1st of April in San Diego, and we played the Cleveland Indians. They had a big left-handed pitcher named Sudden Sam McDowell, 6'6", kind of almost like a Randy Johnson type guy, just threw 95 to 100.
He's a big boy.
And we pulled into the stadium, and the marquee sign was Sudden Sam versus Hammer and Hank.
Oh, wow.
Well, the first time up, McDowell threw him 4 fastballs in a row.
Just challenging him. I love that.
And Hank tore the paint off the wall in left center with a line drive about the 4th one.
Yeah.
And then, pitchers in the National League used to talk about Hank Aaron was sneaking a fastball by Hank Aaron. It's like trying to sneak the sun by a rooster. Can't do it,
It doesn't happen.
And they would try, and sure enough, it was like a gunslinger fight. And Hank, he could put wood on a bullet. The guy had the quickest, fast hands, and he could hit the fastball a long ways.
Yeah,
but anybody's fastball, 100, 103, he could hit it.
Badass. So was he a veteran when you were telling me the story yesterday about your debut when the manager told you a week out? Was he one of the veterans in the locker room that was laughing at you when you came back?
Yeah, he had his locker was right next to the manager's office.
Okay. Tell that story if you can. Remember when you were saying yesterday the other day?
Well, everybody talks about when they were told they were going to make the major leagues, and with about 5 days to go in spring training, we were playing a game down in Sarasota, Florida, the White Sox American League team. I was catching for the Braves, and I'd been playing good, and I had a good spring. I led the team in hitting. I hit 380 in spring training as a 20-year-old. And, when you're hitting good, you're playing good. I felt really good about my game. And
walking around a little cocky. That's good.
Yeah, and I felt,
confident.
Good, confident. And I knew the writers were coming up, and they said, hey, number one catching job is open. Torrey had been traded to St. Louis, and they're considering you, and so, I mean, I kind of knew I had a chance to make the club. The veteran pitchers, Phil Necro and some of the other guys liked pitching to me. So we played a game against the White Sox, and we had a lead, and it was a defensive play more than getting 3 hits, but they had it was late in the game. The White Sox were rallying. Their fastest run, a Hall of Fame shortstop, he's from Venezuela. He's in, I'll think of his name. But anyway, fast runner to second base, and a big, heavy first baseman named Pete Ward at first base. They had 2 runners on. It was Louis Aparicio was the runner at second base. Okay. Base stealer. They were the go-go White Sox. And so we had first and second, and we had like a 1-run lead. And Aparicio decided to steal third, and all Ward had to do at first is watch Aparicio and go to second. Right. Well, he was slow doing that, so they double steal, and I caught the ball. Instead of trying to throw Aparicio out at third base, I just threw it to second. Not lobbed it. I threw it to second. Second baseman was heads up, tagged the runner, got out of the inning. And it was kind of the defensive play of the game that got us out of the jam, and we won the game. And so the game was over, and I'm taking my shin guards off and getting all my gear in my catching bag. And the manager came up and sat next to me, put his arm around me, and goes, "Kid, you just made the team." He said, "We open up in 5 days from now in Atlanta against San Francisco Giants. You're going to be my opening day catcher."
Oh, my God. That's so awesome.
You've had a great spring, and congratulations. But I'm telling you right now, you can call your parents, call anybody you want, but you're going to be my opening night catcher.
Oh, my God.
So we go into back home, and we're going to open up spring training. Open up the regular season, and he, like all managers, he had a spot where he put his lineup card and listed everybody. In the newspaper that morning, the Atlanta Journal, they had a picture of the starting lineup, and I was in the newspaper.
You're all checked, ready to go, buttoned up.
So
did you call family? Was family there? Everybody was there?
Well, my dad showed up. Yeah. But I got to the park, put my uniform on. We're going to go out, take batting practice, and then play the game that night. And so I go down to look at the lineup card. Name was not on the card. And, I say I was upset. I said, well, the manager told me I was going to be the opening day catcher. So I walked down into his office, knocked on the door, and he said, "Yeah, rookie, come on in." And I walked right up to the desk, and I goes, "Skipper, you said I was catching tonight. How come my name's not on the lineup?" Well, little did I know, he made a decision with Juan Marichal pitching, who was coming off like a 25-win season. He made a decision of catching the veteran guy, and I ended up getting in the game later that game for defensive purposes. But so when I told him, or basically asked him why I wasn't catching,
he put you in your place, huh?
It was not a good scene, because he stood up and he walked around his desk and he got right in my face. His finger was going nose, just about hitting my nose. And he said, "Rookie, don't ever come in here and ask me, the manager, why you're not playing."
Oh, my God.
And I crawfished out of the room, and all the players, and they were laughing, 20-year-old rookie just made a bad rookie mistake. So I went back to my locker, sat there. Game started. I'm out in the bullpen. And I did come in the 8th inning, and the throw had come in from the outfield and skipped up and hit the starting catcher above the eye. He had a big gas, so he was out of the game. And my first at bat, at the bottom of the inning, I sack bunted a runner at second, and we got a hit and won the game.
Nice.
And that was my first official at bat, was a sacrifice bunt. And then the next night I started, the Giants went with their second best pitcher, Gaylord Perry, Hall of Famer. And first at bat, I came up in about the third inning, runners at first and third. I hit a ground ball between first and second. The first baseman was Willie McCovey. He dove for the ball and almost landed on second base. He was so big. They
like
called him
6'6",
Stretch.
yeah.
And it went under him for a base hit in the right field. They got the ball for me and got it back to Baton Rouge as my first hit in the major leagues. And
I love it. That's pretty
you
bad.
know, so that was kind of my highlight with the Braves. And 69 was the first year of division play. We ended up winning the Western Division. We were in with Cincinnati, Houston, Dodgers, Padres, Giants, and we won a division.
Nice.
And we played the New York Mets, the Miracle Mets, in 1969.
Oh.
And we got swept. They had pitching Tom Seaver, Koosman.
They won the World Series that year, right?
Yeah, they beat the Baltimore Orioles after they
that's
beat us, but they swept us.
That's a tough draw the first round.
Yeah, and
you were fourth in AL or NL Rookie of the Year voting too, right?
yeah, well, I actually
cool.
came in second.
Oh, second? Okay.
Hank Aaron, it was really cool. With about a month ago in the season,
Yeah.
Hank Aaron came out with a story and says, you know, there's 4 or 5 guys are fighting to be the Rookie of the Year, and he says, nobody's been more important to us than this little catcher, Bob Didier, because, one, our best pitcher, 25-game winner, was Phil Negro, knuckleball pitcher. And I caught him. He won 25 games that year.
Oh, my God. And you had to catch knuckleballs every 5 days?
Every 5 days, I led the National League in pass balls.
Yeah.
I knew every fan in the first 2 rows behind home plate by their first name.
You guys were tight. Saw them a lot during the game.
And really, Bob Uecker gave me some tips, but I became considered the best knuckleball catcher.
That's awesome.
And really, like I've told hundreds of people, it's easy to catch a knuckleball. Just wait till it stops rolling and then pick it up. And, so I...
Did you have that big catcher's glove that you just had to bat it down?
Huge mitt like a butterfly. And then what was funny, with a month to go in the season, you always pick up veteran players.
Yeah.
We picked up a relief pitcher by the name of Hoyt Wilhelm.
Hoyt Wilhelm, okay.
Knuckleball pitcher.
Yeah,
he was 2 years older than my father, and I was catching him. He was like 50. My dad was like 48, and Hoyt Wilhelm was like 50.
That's an old man.
I'll tell you a quick story. We have 3 games to go. If we win, we were playing Cincinnati in Atlanta. If we win this 3rd game to go at the end of the season, we clinch the division championship. So we're playing in Atlanta. They had the horses around the outfield on the warning track.
Love it.
And the city was getting ready to go nuts. It was going to be their first championship,
regular season,
in Atlanta. And so 9th inning, we brought Wilhelm in, and we were 3 outs away from winning the Western Division Championship. So we got 2 quick outs, and Wilhelm was pitching. And they had an outfielder named Alex, I'll think of his last name. Alex, he could really hit. He won a batting title.
It's so impressive that you can remember all this stuff too, like just memories of like specifics of the game. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's just,
I love it.
Like I said, I feel like Forrest Gump right now. But
Well, I'm sitting here locked in, so you got me locked in for sure.
So we got 2 out, nobody on it.
Yeah.
Alex, not Gonzalez, but Alex, I mean, he could hit. 320 lifetime hitter. So we got 2 out, nobody on base, and Wilhelm is pitching.
Mm-hmm.
So the count goes, I call a knuckleball, was just wiggle my fingers, he'd throw a knuckleball.
Yeah.
So first pitch, ball 1. Wiggle my fingers, knuckleball. It's 2 balls and no strikes. And Wilhelm, like I say, is 3 years older than my dad, and I'm catching him. So I said, well, it's 2-0. We don't want to walk him, so I called for a fastball.
Yeah.
And his fastball is about 65 to 70 miles an hour, but he could throw it for a strike. So I called for a fastball, and he shook his head. Okay, knuckleball, 2-0 knuckleball, ball 3. Ugh. So it's 3 balls and no strikes, 2 out. We're 1 out away from.
Right. What's the score?
We're up like 3-2, 4-3. We're up by one run.
Okay.
And this is the time run at the plate.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, I'm catching. And so it's 3-0, and I go fastball 1, and he shakes his head. Before, it was 3-0. He calls timeout on the mound, and he waves me out. So I run out to the mound. I get to the bottom of the mound. I'm walking up.
Yeah.
And what am I going to tell a guy that's over 50 years old, been pitching longer than I've been living? And he says, Bob, the only thing you know about pitching is it's hard to hit. Get behind the plate. I'm throwing a knuckleball. So 3-0, he threw a knuckleball. He couldn't take a chance of this guy hitting a home run. So 3-0 knuckleball, strike 1. 3-1 knuckleball, strike 2. 3-2 knuckleball, ground ball to shortstop. I'm backing up. We win. We dog pile, between the mound and first base. And we go inside, and the champagne, And, I'm pouring champagne on Hank Aaron, and our first baseman was Orlando Cepeda, and they're pouring it on me, and we're just, having fun. I mean, that's the most fun thing you can do in baseball is win a championship.
Yeah.
And so now we're spreading out, celebration's over, and the main sports writer in Atlanta was a gentleman named Furman Bisher, Hall of Fame sports writer. And he came up to me and he congratulated me. He was writing a story about the championship 1969 Atlanta Braves, and he said, Bob, I want to tell you something. I've covered baseball a lot of years. I've never seen a 20-year-old catcher go out and settle down a 50-year-old pitcher like you did today. I couldn't tell him what happened.
What really
but
happened.
I said, I just had to go out and just, settle him down.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, to
take the credit. Yeah.
I
milk it and
So, I didn't want to blow my cover. So, and like I say, we played the Mets.
Right after.
And it was like a 3 out of 5. They swept us. We got Seaver the first game. We got Kuzma the second game. Third game, a guy named Gentry. And then in the 5th inning, they brought in Nolan Ryan throwing about 105. Jesus. And we didn't have a chance.
He was like a child then, right? He was young. He was
21 years old.
So you guys came in the league around the same time then?
Yeah, just about.
That's pretty cool.
And I tell you what, he threw the smallest baseball I ever saw in my life. It looked like a little pea coming up there. And I will never forget. I knew I had to get the bat going. I swung at one of his fastballs, and I swear it rose about 4 inches, went over the bat right into the catcher's mitt. It's the smallest baseball I ever saw.
That's the way I felt about Charlie Morton. I hadn't hit in 7 years, and I had to go face Charlie Morton. He's throwing 96 mile an hour power sinkers. I'm trying to bunt and the ball is just disappearing. I was like, I can't even do this. I'm looking in the dugout like, what the fuck's going on? I can't imagine what Nolan Ryan was like.
Yeah, I mean, it was, in fact, early in the year we went into New York, and we had about 3 of our veteran players, right-handed hitters, because he was hitting 10 or 12 and striking out 15. And
wait, he was hitting 10 or 12 guys?
Batters, yeah. I mean, he'd walk 7 or 8, he'd hit 10, and then he'd strike out about 20, 15.
What the hell were the fielders doing? They were just standing around doing nothing.
Well, all I know is our manager, all the veteran players were going in saying, my leg's a little stiff. Maybe I should take a day off. This would be a
good day.
Good day for me to sit it out because
I don't want to be around for a 5-hour game.
He was throwing balls all over the gym, over your head, behind you, and I mean his control was not very good.
Yeah, I feel like so the hitters against him didn't want to play against him. The guys on the team probably didn't want to be in the field.
No, they take their chance against Seaver or Kuzman. Yeah. At least they could see the ball.
Yeah, exactly, and not have to worry about their head being taken off.
Yeah, I mean that baseball, it hurts when it hits you.
Yeah, coming out 103 too doesn't make it any better. All right, so tell me real quick. So my childhood dream or Yankees were the Yankees. Who was the best? I mean, you don't have to go into too detailed, but who was the biggest party guy? Who was the most fun on the team? Who was the clubhouse guy? Like who were the guys when you were there with the Yankees?
Well, I used to before the game. Would do front toss down the tunnel in Yankee Stadium, and Paul O'Neill was kind of like my favorite guy because he was so emotional.
I love Paul O'Neill.
And, I mean, look.
Used to bang the shit out of coolers.
Break water coolers, break bat. If he made an out, everybody got out of the dugout because he was – if he didn't hit you with the bat, it might splinter and hit you. But he just was so intense, and his attitude – really was, I thought, a key for us because he gave us the energy and, I mean, the emotion that the great teams have to have.
Yeah.
And, Jeter, again, well, I guess probably my favorite, the way he played all around defense and whatever the team needed, Jeter would do it for the team to win.
David Cohn, was he a party boy?
Well, David Cohn, I tell you what, I love David Cohn. He pitched a perfect game, and this is what he did after the perfect game. I was a Major League Advanced scout, and I wrote a paragraph on how to pitch each guys.
Yeah.
So I didn't really expect anything, but all his teammates, he bought these Swiss watches, and on the back of the watch, David Cohn, perfect game, the date, and put it in a nice box, and he gave everybody, a watch. He paid like $250,000 for 25 watches.
Wow.
And then when I came into town a couple of days later, I went over in Yankee Stadium because a lot of times I'd give my report right in the stadium, advance report.
Yeah.
And he says, Bob, before you leave, stop in my locker. And he had a bag from this real nice jewelry store in New York. And he gave me, it had gold-plated, had your name on it, and it said, thanks, David Cohn. It's the classiest.
Wow.
I mean, as much as I like my rings, the fact that individual player gave me this gift I treasures that really as much as my 5 World Series rings. And but he's just a class guy, a real competitor. And look, he had pitches. I mean, he probably had the best feel for pitching that I ever watched with my eyes, as far as dropping down,
that's what I always
taking off on the ball.
Sometimes his slider and his curveball were bigger, smaller that day, depending on, I remember one time watching him pitch, and they were talking about, depending on the humidity, he would grip his slider differently, and it would have more or less break. I was like, holy shit, that's like a new level of taking pitches.
He just had, if he dropped down a little bit and the hitter gave, The next pitch with 2 strikes, he'd drop down a little bit more, and hitters just couldn't hit him. I mean, he had great feel of making the ball move and taking off a little soft, putting a little on, elevating the ball. He didn't throw particular hard, low 90s maybe, and but he knew how to get hitters out.
Yeah, that was the thing. I just loved watching him pitch. He was a pitcher. That's awesome. Well, Bob, I think you got to get rolling to the airport. I feel like we could sit here and talk for hours. So tell us a little bit real quick before I let you go about some of the stuff you're doing. You know, we were talking before we put the mics on, but a little bit of the youth baseball that you're doing in Arizona, Didier baseball, kind of the dream series that you're doing with Team USA.
Well, the Major League Baseball, I've done camps for them. They sent me to Brazil for 2 weeks to promote Major League Baseball down in Brazil, a soccer country.
Yeah,
I've been to Europe.
Too. That's cool.
I've been to Europe where they had a camp in Italy, brought in like 40 players from all over Europe, Russia, France, and like of those 40 players, there were good players, 14 to 16 years old. Like 10 or 11 ended up signing a professional contract with 4 or 5 of them reaching the major leagues.
Wow.
From Europe, you know, the
cool.
soccer countries.
Yeah.
And but
that's pretty cool.
Major League Baseball also about 10 years ago, they have academies in the inner cities of Compton, California, Chicago, one down here in New Orleans. They have them in Atlanta and Philadelphia.
Yep.
And I've gone around and helped coach catchers, my position, and help get these kids get college scholarships, sign professional. We had a kid get drafted 2 years ago with Texas, Ian Moeller, Moeller. He was like a 3rd-round pick, and he young kid that 3rd round. He got like $4 million to sign. That's pretty good for an inner city kid.
But just the opportunities that you guys are providing, right?
Yeah,
that haven't traditionally been there. So I love that.
It's just teaching baseball is something that I love to do. It's giving back, and to be able to do that and help these kids get a college scholarship, which leads to an education, possibly professional baseball. I live out in Phoenix. One of my kids that I coached 5 years ago got a scholarship to Xavier University in Cincinnati. Yeah. And they were playing out at Surprise, Texas Rangers spring training facility. They got roughed up a little bit. They were playing Oregon State, but he was on a baseball scholarship. But
That's
he
awesome.
Was a Dream Series kid, and it's just fun working with these kids and watching them and helping them. And baseball, giving back is something that more and more players, yourself included, the career you have, all the knowledge you have, we can give it back to these young kids. And just the better you play the game of baseball is a hard game, and you need coaching and instruction, and you got a chance to compete at a high level.
And just experience, right? Like that's the thing is, with my podcast, if one kid or coach or parent hears something, it helps them, right? Like that's just me doing what you're doing the same way, right? And even our podcast here, I'm listening, you're telling me stories, I'm learning things about guys I've looked up to, and it's just passing on information. It's not anything like we're educating anybody, we're just giving experience, and that's what a lot of people don't have, right? And a lot of 15-year-olds, a lot of parents never been down this road. So I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for the game to help grow it. That stuff out in Brazil and the Europe series, I didn't know it. That's really cool. So is that part of the Dream series?
Yeah, Major League Baseball is just trying to give back. They do girls fast pitch. Jeannie Finch, I've met her a couple times.
Jenny, yeah.
And she, I watched her pitch one day.
Hey.
I watched her pitch one day off a mound. no way I could hit that.
No, hell no. And it's like 40 feet. They're so close. There's no shot we would ever hit it.
It's crazy. But,
Yeah.
boys, girls.
Yep.
But baseball is such a great game that I'd love to see youth growing up, team sports. Baseball, you make friends, you compete, you learn how to win, you learn how to lose. And baseball, I'm kind of like, I'm going to end up, I guess, my Saturday night line. Baseball has been very, very good to me. I've traveled the world, I've coached, I've been around baseball, and it's just, I love it to death. I mean, it's a great sport.
It is. And I've appreciated getting to know you and throughout the years, and you helped me even when I was playing, and were always a helping hand to me. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the time, and I'll let you get rolling so you can to get on your airplane. Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Good luck to you, and if you're ever in Arizona, I'd love to take you out for a little golf, round of golf.
You got to teach me how to golf. That's the next step. I suck at golf, so yeah, that's the next step, though. But thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It's great to be here in Baton Rouge, see all my family, and eat some good Cajun food.
That's right, and all your kids
I've already
are here,
had gumbo. I've had just about everything. Crawfish. I was at the parade the other day. I thought it was Mardi Gras, but had some boiled crawfish, and I may try to throw some red beans and rice in today, my last day in the state of Louisiana.
There you go. Get it before you get out. Yep. We'll see you again, though, and maybe when you come back, we'll do another one. This was fun, for real.
Thank you very much. Great seeing you.
You too. Appreciate it.